Writing can be scary. The prospect of spending hundreds of hours typing out tens of thousands of words, which might never get picked up by an agent or publisher, is terrifying. I should know because it's something I've been through. That's probably why writers are constantly looking for tools to improve their chance of success and make the process less painful. If you've spent any time at all researching writing theory, you've almost certainly come across the 3-act structure, but there's still a surprising amount of mystique around it: when to use it, whether to use it, and how to use it. In my last video, I used the 3-act structure as a tool for analysing Philip K. Dick's novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, but this video will be more instructional. I'll give you an overview of the 3-act structure in simple terms and how it relates to your protagonist's character arc. I'll walk you through each story beat with examples of that beat to help you understand them. And finally, I'll give you a really practical demonstration of my process and my tools for using the 3-act structure to plan, write, and edit a novel, which you can begin using right away. So to demystify the 3-act structure, it's basically a series of common story beats with suggested timings, one roughly every 1/8 of the way through the book, to help keep your story well paced. The risk with the 3-act structure, or any plot structure tool, is that if you focus on plot alone, your characters can feel flat and contrived, being pushed from plot beat to plot beat with no agency of their own. That's why a great story needs to have plot, character, and theme inexorably linked. In her book, Creating Character Arcs, K.M. Weiland describes 5 types of character arc and how they map to each plot beat of the 3-act structure. This means that within the 3-act structure, you can tell a wide variety of stories of protagonists going through positive transformations, from coming-of-age stories to redemption tales, 3 types of negative change arc, a disillusionment, where, like in a positive change arc, the protagonist escapes the thematic lie, but only to discover a dark, tragic truth. A corruption, an inversion of the positive change arc, where the character starts off knowing the truth, but embraces the lie. A fall, where a character starts off believing a thematic lie, just as in a positive change arc, but moves towards a new, darker lie, rather than the truth. Finally, there are flat arcs, where the protagonist changes the world instead of the world changing them. Think classic Superman or hard-boiled fiction. Of course, characters other than your protagonist will also go through arcs during your story, but these won't necessarily be anchored to the same plot beats. So now I'm going to take you through each of the key beats laid out in the 3-act structure, and I'll be illustrating them with examples to make them easier to understand. I'll be using examples from Star Wars, a classic hero's journey, an archetypal form of the positive change arc. Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, as I wanted to give you a book example, and I've recently uploaded a detailed analysis of this novel if you want a bit more detail. Toy Story, a brilliantly structured movie most people will already know, and a rare example of dual protagonists being done well. Of course, this will be filled with spoilers, so skip ahead to the timestamp on screen now if you want to avoid them. The first beat is the hook, the start of your story. It should set the tone, introduce key themes, and ideally introduce the protagonist and other main characters. In Star Wars, we start in media res, in the midst of the action, with a space battle and Darth Vader stalking Princess Leia. Note the protagonist, Luke Skywalker, isn't present in this scene and is actually introduced quite late in this story. In Do Androids Dream, a redemption story, we're introduced to the protagonist, bounty hunter Rick Deckard, his goals, his key relationship with his wife Iran, and we get some low-key conflict as they argue about his career killing androids. In Toy Story, we also start in medias res. We meet a bunch of characters and find out how this toy world works. The inciting event is the protagonist's first brush with the central conflict of the book, about 12% of the way in, In Star Wars, this is the moment Luke Skywalker sees a message from Princess Leia asking for help. Up until this point, he wasn't aware of the larger events he was about to be caught up in.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
In Do Androids Dream, Deckard learns that a group of new Nexus 6 model androids have arrived on Earth and shot the lead bounty hunter for his precinct. In Toy Story, this is when Woody first meets Buzz Lightyear and shows signs of feeling threatened by this cool new toy. The first plot point, 25% of the way in, is the point of no return, when the protagonist fully enters the adventure world of the story. In Star Wars, this is Luke learning his aunt and uncle are dead and agreeing to go with Obi-Wan, having previously refused the call to adventure. This lands a little late at 33% of the way in. In Do Androids Dream, Deckard discovers his test to identify androids works on the new Nexus 6 model, and he can start his mission. In Toy Story, Woody realizes that Buzz is now Andy's new favourite toy, and they enter into a competition for his affection. The first pinch point, 37% of the way in, is a demonstration of the antagonist's power. In Star Wars, it's the Empire catching up with Luke and Obi-Wan, who have to escape with Han Solo on the Millennium Falcon. In Do Androids Dream, Deckard is almost killed by one of the Nexus 6 androids disguised as a Soviet agent, and he realizes how convincingly they can pose as humans. In Toy Story, Buzz falls out of the window, and after being blamed by the other toys, Woody goes out after him. The real antagonistic force of this story is Woody and Buzz's rivalry, which has caused the incident, heightening the conflict. The midpoint, halfway through the book, is the moment the protagonist glimpses the thematic truth and becomes more active in the story. In Star Wars, there's a mirror moment where Luke sees Han Solo as a reflection of his own lack of faith and purpose, and there's a false plot victory of reaching Alderaan.
I have a very bad feeling about this.
In Do Androids Dream, there's an even more stark mirror moment when Deckard meets a fellow bounty hunter even more devoid of empathy than he is, causing him to question his own existence. In Toy Story, Woody and Buzz end up at Sid's house. Woody realizes how vulnerable he is when he sees Sid torture and mutilate other toys, while co-protagonist Buzz has a mirror moment when he sees an advert for Buzz Lightyear dolls and realizes that he really is just a toy.
Buzz Lightyear!
Available at all Al's Toy Mountain outlets in the Tri-County area.
The second pinch point is another reminder of the antagonist's power, 66% of the way in. In Star Wars, Han, Luke and Chewie are now united with Leia and are chased through the Death Star and forced to hide in a garbage compactor. In Do Androids Dream, we get to see the antagonist android's plan to kill Deckard through a second POV character's eyes. In Toy Story, the other toys refuse to help Woody, still believing he's harmed Buzz.
Say that for the jury. I hope Sid pulls your voice box out.
The second plot point is usually a Pyrrhic victory for the protagonist, followed by disaster, often a death and a dark night of the soul. In Star Wars, this is marked by the death of the mentor figure, Obi-Wan, as the others escape the Death Star. The second plot point in Do Androids Dream is quite a messy one, but I'd place it when Rachel Rosen sleeps with Deckard and then reveals she's only done so to use his empathy against him. He'll now be helpless against the other androids, or so she thinks. In Toy Story, Buzz and Woody finally start working together to escape Sid, only to realise they are too late and Andy is already driving away to his new home. The climax begins 88% of the way through the story, but results in a climactic moment just before the end. I tend to plan these as two separate beats, but will handle them together here. In Star Wars, Rebel pilots prepare for battle as the Death Star approaches, and we have a mentor moment as Obi-Wan's ghost tells Luke to use the Force, and Luke destroys the Death Star. In Do Androids Dream, Deckard arrives at the apartment block where the androids are hiding out, and has a similar mirror moment to Luke. He sees a vision of the messianic Wilbur Mercer before gunning down the androids. This concludes the external conflict, but Deckard then goes on a kind of vision quest to complete his character arc. In Toy Story, there is a high-speed chase scene with Buzz and Woody working together to catch up to Andy. The resolution comes at the very end of the book. It gives us a sight of our protagonist post their transformation and a glimpse into their future. In Star Wars, our heroes receive medals, suggesting a new elevated status for Luke, as is common for protagonists following a hero's journey arc. In Do Androids Dream, we see Deckard demonstrate that he has rediscovered his empathy and humanity, and we get a sense that his relationship with his wife can be healed. In Toy Story, we flash forward to Christmas. Buzz and Woody are now firm friends, and the rivalry is over. So that was our whistle-stop tour of the 3-act structure. It should have given you a good sense of the wide variety of different stories you can tell using this structure, from dystopian redemptions to kids' adventures. It's also worth noting that 2 of the 3 stories deviated at some point from the structure. This is a really important lesson. This is still your story. The structure is just a tool to help you tell it. But if on balance you feel you need to deviate from it to tell the best story you can, go for it. Make that trade-off. Some of the greatest stories ever told have done so. Just do it consciously, understanding what you're giving up and what you're gaining in return. Now the theory's out of the way, I'm going to give you that really practical run through my approach to planning, writing and editing using the 3-act structure I promised earlier. While in this video we've been focusing on plot, I recommend planning and editing your novel in a very integrated way, iterating between character, theme and plot, all informed by your overall premise. If you're anything like me, you'll also be writing some fragments of the book itself as ideas for scenes take shape. While I'm a planner by nature, I often write scenes out of order, like a pantser or discovery writer would, but I need to know how I'm going to fit them back into the overall plot, which is just one way in which having a structure can really help. I'm a geek, so I tend to do most of my planning in Excel, then my writing in Word. I create a file structure like this one and save everything in Dropbox. So if I get an idea on the go, I can access it through my phone or any other device and add a quick note. I like to have a few subfolders set up in my Dropbox. One for anything I'm going to send to agents and publishers, like synopses or letters. A folder with images, research, and anything else for inspiration. And one for old versions of my manuscript in case I want to revisit them at some point. I keep my most recent manuscript itself, some notes, and the Excel that I use for planning and outlining in the top level of my file structure. In my workbook, I set up tabs for each story element. I have a place to capture my premise and motivational factors on why I want to write this particular book. And by the way, the content of this current spreadsheet isn't real. I'm not actually writing a dark retelling of Jack and Jill. I just wanted to drop some text in here so you could see it. So if you want to have a go at writing up the hill, please do. You'll just have to give me loads of money if it's successful, and write your key story beats in the comments below. I like to capture my characters all in one big sheet so I can easily read across them and see if I've got a good balance of personality types, motivations, etc. I'm really drawn to thematic writing, so I also like to capture my story's themes as they emerge, and I use an approach called the thematic square to think about the different aspects of those themes and how they relate to my characters. I sometimes use a timeline to help me make sure the events I'm describing are plausible, so that no dragons are appearing on the opposite side of Westeros in my stories. I also create a conflict and concord chart, which is a tool I've come up with myself. I've not come across another theorist who does things in quite this way. I use it to think about all the sources of conflict or all the reasons for working together characters might have. I find it helps make the character relationships feel more believable and organic. If you'd be interested in a video focusing on conflict and concord, leave a comment to let me know below. Where we're going to spend most of our time today is here, the beat sheet. I use yellow coloured cells to capture my ideas for the story, while the white cells are prompts from the theory, which I use to avoid getting distracted searching through reference books. On the far left are the beats of the 3-act structure we went through earlier. I leave blank lines between them because unless your story is very short, you will have other scenes. Next, I have the corresponding points on the protagonist's character arc, and because I'm a geek, I've made this interactive so I can switch between the different types of arc. I find this especially useful in early development. I'm going to gush over K.M. Weiland's theory work again, because in a recent podcast series, she went through how certain plot beats are related to one another and should mirror one another. I've noted that in the next column, but I really recommend you check out those podcasts too. I then have a note of the ideal pacing for these key beats, the percentage way through the book they should appear. As I write, I note down the actual word count at which the corresponding beats take place in my story, which can really help identifying pacing issues and bloat. I then start capturing my ideas for scenes. I may already have some ideas. For example, I'm just starting on a new novel, and I've drafted a hook scene for the start, a resolution scene for the end, and I have a few other random snippets. I use the next few columns to think about how these plot events impact the protagonist's character arc, the other characters in the book, how they bring out the theme, and also how they'll affect the antagonist's plans. Because writing never seems to be linear, I'll bounce around between these columns and rows and all the other sheets as I work out my whole story over the course of a few weeks. Editing is a similar process. If you have a complete or partial novel draft, you can use this exact same format of spreadsheet. Note down all your key events and then use this approach to think through, how's my pacing? Can I get it closer to the ideal timings for the key beats? Is there any bloat I should cut? Are my main beats doing all they can to express theme and character as well as plot events? Do I have scenes which don't really move along the main plot, main character arc, or themes? If so, why are they there? Are they just a darling I need to kill and potentially resurrect for another story? So that's it, a pretty rapid overview of the 3-act structure, a topic theorists write whole books about. If you want to start using this approach in your writing, here's a couple of ideas of where to start. If you're new to using the 3-act structure in your writing, I'd recommend rewatching a few movies or rereading a few books you love and trying to note down the key beats and the timing in a format like we've gone through here. It's the best way to get an instinctive feel for the structure and really understand it. If you're a more experienced writer and you've got a writing project you've already started, try dropping the scenes you've already got into a spreadsheet like mine. It might help you spot and solve any problems you're having or give you ideas for scenes that you still need to come up with. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. This is a brand new channel, but if enough people like this video, I'll keep producing coaching and theory videos like this. If you've got any suggestions for other topics you'd like to see covered, like how to develop characters or my approach to conflict and concord, or if you have any other questions at all, please leave a comment below. I'll do my best to react or reply to every single one.